I've played a lot of role-playing games, both tabletop and LARP, and it's almost always a great experience, except sometimes it doesn't work. And I tried to figure out why. Why wasn't a player having fun? How was this player making the game unfun for somebody else? Why were there even times that everyone at the table was enjoying the game, but I wasn't? I really stewed on this, and I came up with 2 answers. This video is going to be about the first. This idea occurred to me when I learned a little bit about the game Magic: The Gathering. Magic has names for different types of players who want different things out of the game. A player who is a spike wants to win the game. Johnnies want to build interesting original combinations, and Timmies want to show off cool big creatures. I realized you could probably organize role players into the same types of categories, based on their playstyle and what they want out of role-playing games. I came up with 4 types of role players, which have conflicting goals when they sit down to a table to play a tabletop role-playing game like Dungeons & Dragons or Vampire the Masquerade or what have you, or when they show up to a LARP. Now, to be clear, none of these are better or worse than the others. None of them are good, none of them are bad. They're just different ways people enjoy these types of games. Nor are they always mutually exclusive. In fact, I think most players are more than one type. That's why some people might play different games to scratch those different itches. If you sit down to a game of Scion, where you're playing an unstoppable demigod who's out there punching a kaiju, you're sitting down to a different expectation than if you sit down to a Call of Cthulhu game where you're just a speck in an uncaring universe. And sometimes what you want out of your game can change over time. More on that later. Here are the 4 types. 1. Serena. I named this type after my mom's favorite athlete, Serena Williams. She's an incredible competitor, and she shows up prepped to win. And Serenas are the players who want to do the same thing, to win, whatever that means in your game. In tabletop RPGs, they care more about the G than the RP. They are here to basically play a chess game, but with sheets of paper and dice. Serenas want to know, what's the most effective skill to take? How can I maximize my mathematical odds of winning, of succeeding at what my character is trying to do? Find the most optimal build and use it. Serenas differ a little bit in LARP from tabletop games, but the philosophy is the same. In LARP, Serenas are sometimes referred to as stick jocks. They enjoy the sports side. They love combat. They want to be the one to beat up the bad guy. They will take whatever skills they deem most effective rather than focusing too much on flavor. Serenas obviously shy away from games that are entirely narrative. They get frustrated when the players they're collaborating with don't make the optimal choice, work against their group's best interests for the sake of a character or for a laugh. They can be disappointed when a storyteller fudges the rules a little to make a story beat happen, or when the storyteller puts them in a situation that they can't actually solve with the skills that they've chosen. If your players are Serenas, give them a baddie to hit, put them in a dungeon crawl, and let the dice decide the outcome. 2. Edgar. I've named this type after Edgar Allan Poe, and for a specific reason. Sometimes the protagonist in Edgar Allan Poe stories and poems wins. Sometimes they don't. The detective succeeds in solving the brutal unalivings in the Rue Morgue. Sometimes they get caught because the authorities find the still beating heart underneath the floorboards. Whatever makes for the better story. Edgar players are the same way. They don't necessarily care if their characters succeed, as long as it's interesting, as long as it's a cool story and they've created a cool narrative. They treat tabletop games more like writing rooms, and they treat LARPs like improvised theater. Edgars enjoy the RP more than the G. They tend to make flawed characters with unique voices. They are here to craft a narrative with their friends. They can also get frustrated when their characters fail, but in those cases, it's usually because it's a boring story beat. If a goblin succeeded on a dice roll rather than anything to do with their character flaws or choices they've made. An Edgar might be frustrated if their character perms because of a random dice roll, where a Serena might be fine shrugging and building a new character with different stats to try out some different tactic. If you have Edgars at your table, make sure you have a conversation with them before the game starts about what kind of story they want to tell. In the game itself, give them atmosphere. Use evocative descriptions for the 5 major senses. Paint the world for them. Make NPCs that are also flawed, also unique, that have their own voices. Give your NPCs strong motivations. Make them feel like real characters. For help on that last part, see my previous video, the 3 things all characters need. 3. Lucy. I've named this type after Lucille Ball / Lucy Ricardo. These are your clowns. Lucy's show up to goof off and clown around with their friends in a made-up world without consequences. To reiterate, this is just as valid as any other playstyle, but it is the most likely to frustrate other players who came, like Serena's, to play a serious game or to create a story in a serious world. A Lucy will pickpocket someone for no reason other than to put the stolen item into someone else's pocket. They might attempt things in-game that are silly, that fit more the tone of a cartoon or a Monty Python than a Lord of the Rings. They might disguise themselves as mind flayers by gluing a squid to their face. These are the players that want to hide behind a branch they hold up and tell the orc, no, I'm just a tree. For them, the bit is more important. They're there to be silly and have a laugh. They're more likely to get bored if the game turns into a lot of mechanics, a lot of long combats. They can get frustrated if they feel like they're in that sketch with Liam Neeson where they're trying to do an improv comedy scene and he just keeps talking about how he has an incurable illness. I'm well aware that sounded nothing like Liam Neeson, but you know what I mean. If you have a table full of Lucys, give them gullible NPCs that they can play tricks on. They can play the wacky ones and bounce off of them, Elmer Fudd's to their Bugs Bunny. And let them roll for the ridiculous thing they want to do. Set a very high difficulty. They probably won't make it. If they don't, make them failing fun. If they do, they'll talk about it for years. 4. Walter. There's a famous short story titled The Secret Life of Walter Mitty by humorist James Thurber. It's been made into a movie a few times. It's from the late 30s, so yeah, there's some outdated gender stereotypes, but the gist of it is this. Walter Mitty is a boring man with a boring life, but internally he imagines himself to be all these cool different things. An airplane pilot, the world's greatest surgeon. He wants to imagine he's someone else, someone he thinks is cool, and so do Walters. A Walter wants to be awesome. They are here to be Aragorn. They are here to be Gandalf, to be Batman. When you have a Walter at your table, they're going to be in a hurry to level up. Not because they want to win, but because they want to have the cool thing they can do. They want to unlock that cool skill and see everyone at the table's jaws drop when they do something epic. At LARP, Walters are the ones that go ham on their costumes. Most roleplayers are more Walters than they admit, and there's nothing wrong with that. When I play a role-playing game, I'm usually one myself. No matter who's playing, it's never a bad idea to go out of your way to make them feel cool. Pay attention to what they want their character to be good at and give them opportunities to shine. Let them be the weird exception to the lore at your table. It's okay. No one's going to bust in and say, well, no, dragons would never raise a human. Protagonists exist to be exceptions, and your players' characters should be the protagonists of the world you're telling. Now, if a Walter is doing the thing that they want their character to be good at and is losing anyway, you can still make them feel cool. Let's say you have a character who's a great fighter, but mechanically he's losing the dice rolls to a troll. Describe the troll as big and powerful and scary and intense, and describe how hard it is working to try and hit this guy when it finally lands that hit. Other important note for Walters: don't make NPCs that are cooler. This was a criticism I heard of Baldur's Gate 3, where if you wanted to make a cool, unique barbarian of your own, you could do that, but then you meet Karlach, who is cooler. You could be this awesome Gandalf-like wizard, and then you meet Gale, who is apprenticing under Elminster himself and literally hooking up with the goddess of magic. Now, I don't think that's a valid criticism of a video game where you can play those awesome characters and they're trying to tell a unique narrative using only ones and zeros. But in a tabletop, that would be really frustrating, to try and play this cool character and then there's just a cooler version of you already there. Now, as I said before, all these types are valid, and you might change from one to the other as your campaign progresses or as you play different games. Players tend to joke about serious campaigns devolving into silliness, but the opposite also happens a lot. There's a frequent phenomenon where fun characters that seem like Lucys and get a laugh initially will gradually turn into Edgars to match the tone of the story. The webcomic Trixie Wizard did a great gag about it. Session 1, a ridiculous pie-throwing cow who's also a clown. Session 40, the tragic romantic hero, cow who is also a clown. All that to say, talk to your players before you play a game. Figure out what they want out of it and what you want out of it. Let them know the tone you want to set. Just because you've watched a lot of streaming games that have incredibly talented Edgars doesn't mean that's what's right for your table. You might be sitting down with a table that's entirely Serena's, and you don't have to name any NPCs, just stat out some dungeons and send them off. Maybe your play group is full of Lucys, and you can make NPCs like Lord Goosepoop or Butterlaps, Demon of Gluttony. If everyone at your table is having fun, you ain't doing it wrong. That's my advice for storytellers, or DMs, or whatever your game calls it. In my next video, I'm going to talk about the other main thing that can cause a role-playing game to be less fun. And this one is up to you players to fix. If this video was helpful to you, feel free to share it with your friends, feel free to like. If you want to see more videos about roleplay, about writing, about interesting folklore, hit subscribe below, and check out my previous video, The 3 Things All Characters Need. Also, comment below which of the 4 types you think you are. I'm curious what the ratio is. Or if there's another significant type of role player that you think I've missed, say so in the comments. I'm Carrie Kingdom. No, that is not a made-up LARP name. Thanks for watching.